Welcome, everyone, to another episode of See You on the Other Side.
Hi.
Hello. I'm feeling good today because I microdosed. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. They're like, they're fucked
happy.
up. And I'm like, no, we're not.
We're just happy. So I got a message from a friend, and she wanted us to do an episode about empathy and empaths. So
I love this.
I'm very excited to get into this. So in a lot of our episodes, we've talked about Leah and myself being empaths. And then we realized some people may not really know what that even means.
I knew we were going to talk about this eventually. I didn't know when and where it was going to happen, but I do think that it's important because I feel like, especially now with the age of TikTok and Reels and
social media,
Instagram in general, especially in the last couple of years, there has been so much conversation and language around empaths and narcissists, and we can get into that in another episode, but everyone is being labeled an empath or a narcissist.
Yes.
And it's so easy to do that. And I think it's important in this episode that we kind of bring people away from those labels and really digging into what it means. Because just because you saw a TikTok and a put her finger down challenge and you resonated with that doesn't necessarily mean that you are or aren't an empath.
Right. And then also another thing too is you can be maybe a highly sensitive person.
Right.
But you're not an empath.
Right.
But if you are an empath,
you're a highly sensitive
You are a highly sensitive person.
It's all really confusing, but I think we want to try to break it down and make it easy to understand. Because I think it's interesting. You and I have very different paths into knowing that that's what we were.
Yeah. So why don't you go into how you found out that you were an empath?
I think I maybe said a shaman told me in an episode, and that is kind of how it happened. I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know what the word was. I knew I had extreme empathy, but I thought that was normal. I thought, who doesn't have empathy?
Right.
Like, how is it not bothering you?
Right. And a lot of people are empathetic in certain situations.
Absolutely.
Right. Like a lot of us are. You know, you see somebody who's struggling, you're like, oh my goodness, like that's so sad. I hate that they're going through that. Where a true empath is somebody who takes it home and takes it with them and takes it as they can feel what the other person is feeling. They truly feel it.
They take it as their own. It's hard to make that line where, okay, that's sad what they're going through and I feel really bad for them, and then turn around and go have dinner with your family and it not affect you. But as an empath, when you see something like that, it's extremely hard to not let that affect you. You have to work really, really hard, which we didn't know this at the time because we didn't know that that's what we were.
Well, and when we didn't know that we were empaths, but we were doing all of these things and taking, you know, a lot of people's stuff home with us, the struggle was real.
Yes.
Because if you lack an awareness of who you are and, you know, that you even are an empath, like you don't know yourself.
No.
And so you don't know how to cope and deal with those big feelings.
Whenever you're not aware of it, it can cause a lot of anxiety and depression and a lot of mental health issues that if you sit back and think about it, they're really not even yours.
Yeah.
That you're holding on to those feelings. And some of them are, but it's like magnified. So Jason used to get upset with me, my husband, because my sister would be going through something or a client would be going through something or a friend would be going through something and I couldn't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And he would be like, what the fuck? Like, let them deal with it. That's their problem.
Right.
Like, it doesn't even affect you. And I used to be like, what the fuck is wrong with me that it affects me this much? And I really used to think there was something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And
me too.
I had a conversation before the shaman situation happened. I had a conversation with a friend, and it was when I was just learning what an empath was. And she was having this conversation about empaths, and she was like, it really makes me mad when people call themselves an empath and they're not. And so I immediately went back into my shell, and I'm like, maybe I'm not an empath. I don't want to say I am if I'm not. So I'm just that's not what it is then. And then the shaman
told you.
It wasn't exactly that. It was almost like that's what our meeting was supposed to be for her to help me realize that I was what I thought I was. And it was almost like I said the words. I said, so am I an empath? And she was like, yes, finally, you're getting it, finally. And I just lost it. I broke down. I was crying. I was like, that's a lot. And she's like, yeah, it's a lot. And you've been doing it on your own all these years. And so now that you know, what are you going to do about it?
Ooh, I like that. Now that you know, what are you going to do about it?
So I panicked a little bit because I'm like, part of it made sense. I started reading this book, and I think I gave you the book too, or had you read the book?
I bought the book because I found out I was an empath from you.
Okay.
Because I think it's one of those things, you don't want to label yourself as an empath, but then, you knowing you're an empath, you're like, yeah, you are 100% an empath as well. And then also with therapy and going to an energy healer, I learned that about myself too. And Tony could have freaking told me the same thing as well. Once I read the book and was starting to learn about why I feel the things that I feel, and I don't feel so, like you said, I felt crazy. Yeah. And I felt like, well, other people aren't like this, and why am I so emotional about things that literally have nothing to do with me?
Right.
Yeah. Then I needed that awareness.
Yeah.
So then I knew okay, now moving forward, what can I do?
What do I do with
That's still
it?
A struggle, obviously, after, but.
I think that's with anything, when there's something aching in your body and you don't know what it is and you're searching for answers. As soon as you have an answer.
Yeah.
It's like this breath of fresh air, this sigh of relief where you're like, oh my God, okay, all right, now what?
Right. But you're still programmed a certain way. So you have to break certain patterns, right?
Yeah.
And that was something that I had always struggled with, even when I knew I was an empath.
Well, in this book, it's called The Empath's Survival Guide, and the author is Judith Orloff.
Yep.
She's a psychologist. She is an empath, and she's written several books. This book, it changed my life. I read it, and I was like, holy shit, I've never felt so understood, and so much of my life makes sense. And it was this peace. I felt peace,
Yep, same.
But with what you were saying, it was almost hard for me to it's not something you go around I'm an empath, I'm an empath, I'm an empath. Because I did know that there were people out there who are people need to stop calling themselves empaths. So it kind of got in my head a little bit.
Yeah.
But the few people that I did say that to, one of my best friends, Sarah, she was like, yeah, I could have told you that. I was like, what the nobody did. Why didn't anybody tell me? But the difference between having empathy, because I feel like that's normal.
Yeah.
We should
a lot of us feel empathy for certain situations.
A healthy level of empathy.
So when you feel empathy, or when you are empathetic, you feel in tune with others, but you can still separate your experience from theirs.
Okay.
Now, a true empath is a person who is sensitive and highly aware of the feelings of others around them, but it's to a point of taking the pain and agony of others as their own.
Okay.
So when I had 6 packs, being a trainer, you are with your clients multiple days a week. And often, you learn about them. You know about their family life, their work life, their stress level, if they're getting enough sleep, what they're eating, the ins and outs, and you just talk and you
get to know people really well.
You form a relationship with them. And, oftentimes I was a sounding board to a lot of things that they were going through. And oftentimes I could not compartmentalize. I could not hear what they were telling me and how they were struggling and just go home and eat dinner. Tony can attest that, just behind closed doors, a lot of the things that they were going through, I took that pain on. And I felt like if they were very sad, I would be in bed and crying because I could feel their sadness or feel their anger and frustration or just whatever it was. And, Tony is an empathetic person, but he's not an empath. And so it was hard for him to understand, like, why are you taking this on as your own? It's their life. It's, they're adults. They have to navigate that themselves and those feelings. And I didn't know how to separate it. I didn't know how for them to tell me and not feel it. I didn't know how to them talk to me about something very heavy and very deep and then go home and be like, all right, okay.
Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So Real Housewives, that's on tonight.
Yeah.
I would use those things like reality television or mindless TV to escape and numb it almost, because I just I didn't want to sit with it, but I didn't know how to turn it off.
Yeah. I'll talk about that in a minute, how it can affect us in ways that are detrimental to our mental health. And that's one of them.
And that's why we struggled as business owners.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that, but we really did. We really struggled as business owners because we were getting a lot of different energies throughout the day, and we would take all of those energies home.
Yeah.
So
it was very difficult. The interesting thing you said, Tony, your fiance, is a very empathetic person, and my husband and my oldest son are both on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Which one of the traits of anyone who is on that spectrum is low empathy.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was a book about a guy whose brother was autistic and his experience as being the brother. Within the first few chapters, it was talking about how he would hear these things going on around him. I'm just going to say, I'm going to give an example, like the Unabomber or some type of school shooting or something happening in the world around him. And he didn't feel anything because it didn't affect him.
Oh, wow.
But he noticed that people around him
were feeling a
lot of empathy. So he had to fake empathy so he didn't look like an asshole. So with my husband, it's not that he doesn't have empathy. It's just harder for him. We're on two completely different ends of the spectrum when it comes to empathy,
yeah, you guys could not
if
be
it
more
doesn't affect
opposite.
him, he doesn't give a fuck.
Right.
I say that it's not that black and white. He just has an easy time shutting it off.
Yeah.
He's very good. He can sleep at night if there's chaos going on in the world around him, because as long as it's not affecting him, he's okay. And I would look at him and be like, how do you do that?
Right.
How do you do that? I need to know how to do that because I can't.
Right.
So it's been a very interesting 2 years of learning who I am and teaching him who I am.
Right. And then again, to add to that, people weren't coming to Jason and saying, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with this and I'm going through this. They weren't coming to him for advice or just vent or talk to someone. They were doing that to you. So he didn't
I can also tell you why.
Okay.
And that is because the energy that empaths give off is that caring and compassion.
Yeah.
And so it draws a lot of people to feeling open and comfortable enough to be vulnerable with us. When you don't exude that energy, how many times have you ever like, you immediately open up to someone and you're like, wow, I've never told anybody that before. Or you're like, wow, it's so easy for me to talk to you. Like there's something about that person that makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's what empaths are.
Yeah.
And maybe we've talked about this in the mushroom world, maybe not. If not, maybe we could talk about it. But I think anybody who is an extremely empathetic person, and most empaths are very good at being guides or trip sitters.
Yes.
Because they are a safe space and people feel comfortable opening up to them and being their authentic selves in front of them.
Well, and I never wanted, like I said, I was very picky and choosy with who and what I shared for information about myself that was really deep or heavy. But I never wanted, if I shared something, for someone to make me feel judged or make me feel like they weren't listening or like I was weird. And so when people came and brought things to me, I wanted to be that safe space for them. I wanted them to be able to talk about their feelings openly and share things that they were struggling with. I couldn't.
You couldn't separate it.
Yeah.
So that's the what. What is an empath?
So how are empaths?
Oh.
How do empaths become empaths?
How do you become empaths? So I'm getting a lot of my information right now from this Judith Orloff book, but I have several books behind me that I've read. This is just one of the basics. And I think if anybody is questioning whether they are or aren't, or maybe you even are in a relationship with someone who is, and you want to understand them more, this is a good start, I believe. So in this book, she says some are born into it, and they can come from mothers and fathers who have the same traits, but also childhood neglect or abuse can affect sensitivity levels in adults. She has treated a portion of empaths who experience early trauma. And we're talking about, this is where it's tricky, and I want to talk about trauma eventually, because it's not just physical abuse. It's physical abuse, sexual abuse. If you were raised by an alcoholic, that's traumatic. If you were raised by a narcissist, that's traumatic. And this is where I struggled. And this is a hard one because it hit me a little bit.
Okay.
If you are raised by a parent who struggles with mental health or depression or anxiety, that's a trauma.
Yeah.
And that hit me, and I'll tell you why. Because I struggled with depression for so long, and I think about what my kids experienced in those times and how I wasn't able to be there for them the way I should have been because I wasn't there for myself and I was struggling.
Right.
Those kids who grow up in trauma and neglect learn coping skills that most never have to learn.
Right.
We have to learn to read the room.
Yeah. Now, with my dad, he was an alcoholic, and I don't really have a ton of memories with me and him, like alone, really. I remember his interactions with other people more, but with my older sister, I had to be, and we got a message last week from somebody who, she was the oldest sibling, and she had felt guilt about maybe how she treated her younger siblings in the past. And I want to be very clear. I think, sibling fights and all of that stuff is very, very normal. But the things that I went through, it was not just siblings arguing and a sibling rivalry. It was abuse. It was very much so abuse. It was verbal, it was physical, and it was psychological. And so I was very on edge and even hypervigilant because I always felt like there were threats around me, and I didn't know what her mood was. And if she was upset, I didn't know where it was going to go. And so I would try to adjust myself and my personality to not get the brunt of her anger. Oftentimes it didn't work, but I was just always very, very on edge. And I think because of that situation, moving forward in my life, I became very attuned with other people's feelings, and I wanted to help them, and I wanted to be the fixer, because in that situation, I couldn't, like, it was always a lose situation for me. We were never gonna, have an altercation and there was gonna be a compromise, or I felt like I was
like a resolution or anything.
Like it was, I mean, it could have been the way I brushed my teeth that day. So I had to be very hyper aware of what I was doing around her and how I was doing it, because I didn't want to set her off.
So yeah, that would cause someone to grow up and be an empath. The interesting thing about this is, though, narcissists are also born from narcissists, like being in that situation, you can go so many different ways. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if you grew up in trauma, you're automatically an empath. But that's kind of where they're born from.
Yeah.
Where they come from.
Yeah.
So there's also a difference in highly sensitive people. Have you heard of this? HSPs?
Yeah. So a highly sensitive person may feel really big feelings like what an empath does.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily taking on someone else's feelings and energy. Is that true?
So from what I was reading about it, it says they have sensory processing sensitivity. So SPS, they have increased emotional sensitivity and a stronger reaction to external and internal stimuli. So like noise, lights, crowds. So what's interesting is all empaths are highly sensitive. They're highly sensitive people, but not all highly sensitive people are empaths. Yeah. And there's a spectrum to this. And this kind of what you were saying, like the difference between the two, empaths take the experience of being highly sensitive and hold it as their own. So if somebody's angry, we're going to feel angry and not understand why. If somebody's sad, we're going to feel sad. It's almost like we mirror them. Actually, that is what happens. We have there's some science behind this, like mirror neurons. Have you heard of this?
No.
Empaths have more and stronger mirror neurons.
And
so a lot of times when my husband and I are fighting, his go-to is anger, and I mirror whatever he is. So he's like, "You're angry." I'm like, "I'm angry because you're angry." Stop being angry so I can stop being angry, So there is that science behind it. We have incredibly, powerful mirror neurons. And there is a spectrum to this. I wrote it down, but you can't see what I'm seeing. So I'm just going to try to explain this. So with empathy, there is a spectrum. And I feel like with anything in the world, like alcoholism, addicts, there's always a spectrum.
Narcissism.
It's never black and white.
Right.
Okay. So let's say there's a spectrum at the top of it. For empathy are empaths. We feel empathy the most. Underneath that is HSPs, highly sensitive people. Underneath that is people with empathy, who have really healthy empathy towards others, but they're not necessarily HSPs or empaths. Mm-hmm. And at the very bottom of the spectrum is narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths, because they have what's called an empathy deficient disorder.
Oh, wow.
And those mirror neurons that are in their brains don't work that well.
And too, a narcissist loves an empath.
They do.
And oftentimes
they do.
An empath is surrounded by narcissists.
Until you become self-aware and you know what to look out for. But there are books about that too, which is crazy to me, because if you've ever been affected by a narcissist, I feel like I was surrounded my whole life by them.
You attracted them too.
No, I attracted them. Yeah. And it was because they thrive and grow from people giving them attention and giving them empathy. And because of that, that's who I was,
that's how they regulate themselves, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We should do an episode on that one time because the dynamic between the two polar opposites is so insane.
So then when you, because empaths and narcissists mirror each other, but once you became aware of what you were and aware of the boundaries that you needed to place, they don't have you anymore to,
oh my God.
Right. So they have to find someone else. They have to find a supply. Yeah.
Which I'll get into this in another episode, but watching that happen when you set a boundary with a narcissist, like when you set a boundary with someone who is a capable, healthy, not very toxic person, like most of the time it's like an understanding, like, oh, okay, I can do that. You know, when you set a boundary with a narcissist, I swear to God, I will compare it to watching a witch melt. So it is like the meltdown, the attacks that happen after, the abuse that happens after. When that happens, it's almost like, what the fuck did I just do? What just happened?
They mind fuck you.
It's such a mind fuck, but I'm like, this is why that boundary was necessary, and you can't even respect that. And it's like, holy shit, I had no idea it was this bad.
Right. But if you do anything against them, it's all hell is going to break loose. Yes.
That's when you
just saying, hey, that really hurt my feelings.
You're going to get the rage.
Right. You're going to get the wrath.
You're going to, exactly. So it we'll get into the dynamics of those two later. So anyway, there are levels to this shit, just like there are levels to it with anything else.
Right.
And there are different types.
Yes. So there are 3 main types of empaths, according to Judith Orloff's book. The first is a physical empath. So a physical empath is you are especially attuned to other people's physical symptoms and tend to absorb them into your body. You can also become energized by someone's sense of well-being, which this is what I am. For example, if a physical empath's friend is complaining about sharp stomach pains, the physical empath might start to feel similar pain in their body.
You're a physical? I didn't know that.
I feel like I'm physical and
emotional. Because I know people who are physical and they'll say, you know, I can't explain how, but if your thumb is broken, I'm going to feel pain in my thumb.
Yeah.
That I'm not. I'm not a physical empath.
So this is weird, but a lot of times, if Tony is like, oh, I'm feeling sick, I will start to feel what he's feeling. So if he feels like a pain or feels a sore throat, then I'll start to feel a sore throat.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Okay. So 2, it's an emotional empath. You mainly pick up other people's emotion and can become a sponge for their feelings, both happy or sad. They can sit beside a depressed person while watching a comedy and walk out of the movie theater feeling depressed. How? The other person's energy field overlaps with the empath's field during the film.
I'm that.
Yeah. 3, intuitive empath. You experience extraordinary perceptions such as heightened intuition, telepathy. You're
telepathic.
Sound that out for a second. All right. My apologies. Messages and dreams, animal and plant communication, as well as contact with the other side.
See, and I'm not that either, but I know several, most mediums are empaths or Reiki healers or people who can talk to animals or talk to the other side, like psychics and mediums
And then intuitive empaths can be broken down into these 7 types. So there's precognitive empaths, dream empaths, mediumship empaths, plant empaths, earth empaths, animal empaths, and telepathic empaths.
See, that's where I'm there's so many levels.
Yeah, I am none of those.
I'm just emotional. I am just an emotional sponge. That's it. I mean, it's not it. It's a lot. But
it is a lot. It's a lot. Much.
Especially when you are
so much
living your life surrounded by people. It makes you want to hermit up and.
Well, and what we did, we were just surrounded by people.
I still am.
Long. Yeah.
I'm still stuck in the service industry where I see people all day, every day.
But you know how to better handle it now.
I can handle it better. I have better boundaries, but it still affects me in a way that I I kind of wanted to get into this, and I know we're going to be jumping around a lot, but like how it's affected our friendships and how it's affected our relationships.
Yeah.
Because
we should get into that.
Because I'm around a lot of people all the time. You know, I used to see a new person in my workspace every 15 minutes. We would have appointments every 15 minutes, sometimes every 30 minutes, depending on what they were having done. But it's a very close, I'm in a room alone with them. I'm feeling what they're feeling. If they come in and they're in a bad mood,
it's going to put you in a bad mood.
I'm in a bad mood.
Yeah.
So when I realized what this was doing to me energetically and draining me energetically, it left no room for me to see my friends or do the things I wanted to do.
Be there for your family.
Because I was so depleted. I would shut down to the world around me. Someone got angry with me one time because I didn't tell them I was depressed. And I was like, I shut down when I'm depressed. Well, you should want to talk to people. No, I talk to people all day, every day. Mm-hmm. And this is how I handle when I'm going through something is I shut down.
Right.
I don't want to talk to anybody because that's literally what I do all day, every day. And I go in, I want to hermit up.
Right. And we all respond to things differently.
Very differently.
So, you know, kind of having a blanket statement of, oh, well, you should respond this way when you're feeling depressed or down. You know, we all are going to respond very, very differently when we're sad.
Well, and I think there is a difference in sometimes your work environment. Like if you are not, if you're not in a workspace where you're talking with people one-on-one, or you're not getting these like very, very deep connections, you know, you have more energy and space to talk about those things when you're not in a work setting. I'm depleted at the end of my day.
Well, so here's the thing too. There are certain energies. There are people who I actually get energy from.
Yes.
But oftentimes I was put in situations where people were taking my energy.
I'll say this. Once I was aware of this, I was able to listen to my body. And there were some people, have you ever had those friends or family members where you're like, oh, I can only handle them in small doses?
100%.
Or ask yourself why. Do you feel depleted when you're in their presence and when you leave and you're like, oh my God, thank God that's over? Or do you feel like, oh my God, that was such a good quality experience. I can't wait to see them again. So I started paying attention to that and to the people in my life. And this is where it's going to sound harsh, but it's not. I'm going to bring our good Tony into this, you know, our Tony Jones, not your Tony fiance, our Tony Jones. I started realizing that I had to put my energy on a budget. You hear what I'm saying?
Yes. And that's kind of
if
what
you're
I was
not
thinking.
Going to fill me back up, and this isn't I need something from you, because that's not what it is. Like my interactions with you are very fulfilling. I always learn something from them. They're back and forth.
I was going to say, but it's a lot of give and take.
It's a lot of give and take. And I have other friends I love being around them. They're such good energy and positive energy. And I learned something from them. And it's just like, oh my gosh, that was great. Like it filled my energy back up.
Yeah.
But then I would have, and I'm going to say clients and friends.
100%.
Because I also have really amazing clients that I love, and it's going to be sad when I'm not doing this anymore. And
with what we both do, a lot of our clients became our friends.
Yes.
I mean, how we met was I was your client.
You were my client.
And I became your friend.
Exactly.
Hello.
So, but it was because we connected on a very deep level, and that was energizing for me. Like the surface stuff is depleting. So I'll say this without throwing anybody under the bus. What I realized about myself is that when someone is going through a very difficult time, I want to be there for them. I really, really do. And I will do what I can from where I am. But I can't sit in it with them for too long, because then I start going back into that place.
That's what it is.
And it's almost this, I can't keep doing this for you. At some point, you have to start doing it too, because you're depleting me I'm giving you too much. And you may not even be asking for it. That's where it's hard, because they might not even be asking for that, but that's who I am.
Right.
I'm going to want to help you.
Well, and for me, I don't want to continue to be a sounding board for you, talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
When you're not, let's say, we're not therapists.
Right.
You're not going to a therapist. You're not, you're not
being proactive.
Yes, you're not being proactive about the things that you are kind of putting on us, and people may not realize that they're doing that to an empath.
No, I think it's because
it's a safe space.
Right.
It's a safe space. And that's where empaths also have to learn boundaries and be accountable for what they're willing and not willing to put up with. And that was something that I had always struggled with, is there were people who I would want to fix it. But at the end of the day, if you're not wanting to fix your own situation, why am I trying to help fix it?
Right. Well, and it's like have you ever heard someone say, you can tell when something is coming to an end, whether in a relationship or a work relationship, because you want more for that person than they want for themselves.
Yes.
And that's where that depletion comes in. So I just slowly started removing myself from those situations. I would make sure that my energy was budgeted accordingly. I knew I was going through a lot in my marriage at the time, and I could only give so much. So I had to put my energy where it was most important, and that was on myself and on my relationship with my husband. Mm-hmm. And anything outside of that, I had to shut off.
Yeah, it's got to take a back seat.
And it looked very selfish, because I removed some people from my life who did drain me energetically. And it's still something that I sit with, and it's very hard to know that I did the right thing. But I was drowning, and I realized the people that I was surrounding myself with were keeping me low.
Yeah.
And I needed to be with people who were giving back so I could pull myself out.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this in a mean way, but misery loves company. So if you're unhealed, and if you're not, being proactive about maybe things that you need to be proactive with, you want people to sit in it with you.
Right.
And, but once you do heal, you don't want to go back to that place and sit in it with them. Now, you and I think this is why our friendship has worked so much. We've been friends for 8 years, and we were always very, very, very respectful of each other's boundaries. And even when you were struggling or I was struggling and we would talk about it, I never felt like you were taking anything from me. I think because we were so hyper attuned to not doing that to each other.
Yeah.
Where I was very worried, okay, if I talk to you about this, I want you to please tell me, if it's too much or if you didn't respond, I'm not going to take it personally.
Because you probably understood that I was in one of my little episodes.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Or, vice versa too. Because a big thing for me is I always, I want to do something, like go out with my friends. But then when it comes to that day, especially before I knew how to manage my boundaries, when it would come to that moment, I would dread it. And it wasn't because I didn't want to hang out with those people. I just didn't have the energy to show up in a way to be around a bunch of people, because I was constantly depleted. It wasn't anything personal against you or whoever.
Right.
It was me. But you were never a friend who was going to take something like that personally. But I did have friends who did have certain expectations of me that I never could live up to, and they didn't understand me. And I don't think they tried, and I didn't understand myself at that point too.
That's I was just going to say that that level of understanding, it's been hard to change friendships around me. And it's weird because I'm like, I don't, how do you tell someone, or how do you tell someone that their anger affects you without it coming across as being a personal attack? But I just learned this about myself.
Right.
I was friends with these people before I knew that.
Right.
And so when I became aware of this, I struggled with those boundaries. I really did. Like, how much is too much? Like, when can I hang out with them? I have to be in a very good headspace to be around them so I don't feel depleted. But with my current job situation, like, that's like very rare.
Right. You're always depleted.
I'm always depleted.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like, let me get myself out of this hole, get myself out of this career, and then I can give more.
Right. And I think that's why we didn't hang out a lot.
We did. We were so depleted.
Because we were just so depleted. But we also gave, instead of giving energy to each other and to hang out, because we're not going to deplete each other, we were giving energy to people who were going to deplete us. So not only did we own businesses, but then, we were hanging out with people because for me personally, there were some people where if I didn't hang out with them, I was going to get a guilt trip. Where you were never going to give me a guilt trip.
No.
Right? You were going to always respect it.
Absolutely.
And my lack of boundaries, I was going to hang out with the people who were going to, if I didn't hang out with them, they were going to guilt trip me about it.
Well, this is something interesting because it just reminded me of this. I became somewhat of an antisocial person. So the people that I would hang out with would be like, well, she's antisocial, so she doesn't want to hang out, but like we can hang out at my house or do something one-on-one. And what I just realized is, I did start to become somewhat of an antisocial person, but it wasn't because I didn't want to be social. And those one-on-ones, honestly, were more depleting than a group setting.
Yeah.
Because there were no buffers, there was no outside, external energies surrounding us.
When you're with a group of people, you can maybe walk away.
Yes. So I would get in my head and feel these guilty, well, I have to hang out with them because they saw that I went to a birthday party last weekend. And if I keep saying I don't like being social, they're going to see that I'm being social with other people.
God, I did the same
thing. Did you ever do this?
Yes.
Okay. So then I would feel like guilty and be like, well, I have to hang out with them because I hung out with this group of people 2 weeks ago. And now I have to give to them. Right. It was this back and forth, give. And I finally just fucking shut down and was like, not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not being social with anybody at all unless you are a person that I know I can be around and it's an equal balance.
Yeah. You are aware of what you can be around and aware of kind of the energy that you need to be around. And I think that's okay to say.
Well, and this sucks because I'm about to read like the pros and I wasn't going to read them, but I'm on a page right now about the pros and cons. And one of the cons is like, it's isolating.
Yes.
It's extremely isolating.
It is very isolating, but honestly, so is doing mushrooms because
that's isolating too, but it's isolating in a different way.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I posted on my stories one time about like the parallels between like isolating when you're depressed and have like mental, situations that you're dealing with and isolating when you're healing.
Yeah.
They're very different types of isolating.
Yeah.
And I'm not isolating myself because I'm in a low place. I'm isolating myself because I have to.
Yeah.
And because I'm at peace with that.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
Right. You're okay with being alone.
I am totally okay with that.
Having less friends.
Yes.
What did Tony Jones say? She said, my group went from like a large O to a small O.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
My circle
yes.
went from a large O to a small O.
Yes.
A large O to a small O.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. Because I know that smaller group, they don't get angry if I can't be around them. They don't get angry if I don't respond. They understand me on a level. I will say this, though. We didn't understand ourselves.
Yes.
So to expect someone else to understand us is really just
It's too much to ask.
It's too much to ask.
Yes, it was on us. Absolutely.
100% on us. And even with my husband, like he is just now understanding all of this stuff. And, there is an expectation there because I'm like, you're my husband. I need you to understand.
But also he's so opposite of you.
Yeah.
So this is very new.
It's new territory.
But
I read and understand him too. Like
right,
I read about books that help me understand him.
Right. But you read books and do all of that because that's who you are. Where he's not even going to think like, oh, I should read books about Leah being an empath.
No, I have to tell him. And I'm okay with it. It used to make me angry because I'm like, read this book. But now I'm like, no, I'll just tell him because that's how he learns.
Right.
It's interesting because it talks about like what areas of life empathy affects when you are an empath. And one of the things I think you and I can both agree that, it affects your health first off, because you don't know how to set those boundaries and you're taking on too much and you're feeling the feels of everyone until you understand what you can do to remove yourself from that. And there are ways. There is hope.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that it affects people is with addiction. Like a lot of empaths become addicts with food or drugs or alcohol to escape those feelings because they don't know how else to. And that was me. I was smoking to escape these feelings that I didn't understand and I didn't know how to get myself out of those feelings.
That's funny because I remember, and I think I've stated this on a previous episode, where I had done an edible and I had just looked at Tony and said, I hate that I feel like I have to use this to just calm my thoughts and calm how I'm feeling about everything. Like I also was using that as an escape and I just wanted to feel whole without anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because there was just...
You didn't know how to shut it off.
Well, and, even too... If somebody was, really, really sad and I would come home really, really sad and I would also project it onto Tony. So I would maybe create a situation and he would call me out on it and he would say like, I think because this person shared this, and this with you and it was a very angry feeling or a very sad feeling. I think that now you're bringing sadness into with me and you.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I think you're right.
Well, that's another thing that it says it can affect relationships and love. You expect other people to feel what you're feeling, but that's never going to happen.
Oh, right. And how many empaths do you truly know?
There's a very small, one of my other best friends, and maybe a couple of other people.
Yeah, I know very, very few
very
true empaths. So to have that expectation that someone should know how you're feeling or what you're going through.
You're just setting yourself up for failure.
Right. But we often did that.
We did. Because I would do the same thing. Like, why are they mad at me? I would never be mad at them for this. Like, It's because we are not the same person. There's so much about this. This is so hard.
I know.
There's so much to get into.
Yeah.
This is a lot. I know.
It's fine. But it is. It's a lot. So where did you last leave off?
I want to talk about SSRIs and empaths. When I was on antidepressants, I felt numb, and I think a lot of people will say that, but this article, holy shit. I knew...
Get into it.
Okay, so I'm reading this book and it's talking about how sometimes we're affected by medicine differently than other people. So I'm like, I used to feel like if I talked about how medicine wasn't for me, people were going to be like, oh, she's so judgy. But like, no, they're really not for me.
Right.
Because SSRIs affect your empathy receptors.
Yeah.
That is literally how they work. Okay. So that is how they will get you out of a low spot. So this article that I'm about to skim over, they've done these studies with antidepressants and they reduce empathetic responses to the pain of others. They did these studies before, years and years ago, and thought that depression caused a lack of empathy, or that people who were depressed
but it doesn't
lacked empathy. And they realized several years ago when they did these studies, they didn't test these people before they were on meds versus after they were on meds.
Ah, that makes so much sense.
Isn't that crazy? So you're on these antidepressants and they're like, they have such low empathy. Like, that's crazy. It's because they're depressed. No, it's the medicine.
Well, and you and I have been depressed.
Yeah.
And like what caused my depression is I was like feeling so many things from myself and from other people. I couldn't handle it.
So this new study, they found that the medication is what causes reduction in empathy, not the depression itself. And the way that they did this is they would study these people and have them watch like very violent scenes and, you know, I don't know what they were showing them, but probably like horror movies. You and I have talked about how like we can't do horror movies. I want to talk about that.
Okay, yeah.
And these people before medication, like, were like, oh my God, it was so hard to watch. It was very hard to watch people being tortured or murdered or, you know, whatever. I'm saying this and so much makes sense right now because Jason will watch horror movies before bed and it's not even he used to be like, you never want to watch this stuff. I'm like, because it affects me differently. So that low empathy, like he's able to watch that and it doesn't sit with him, you know? Mm-hmm. So then they would study them after they were on medication, like 3 or 4 months after. And they were like, yeah, it doesn't really bother me. So call me crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like that is what's wrong with the world. We are missing so much empathy
and love and compassion,
because the people who are trying desperately to get themselves out of these depressive and anxious states are being medicated, and they are taking something that lowers their ability to empathize and feel for other people.
Holy shit, yeah.
Am I crazy for thinking that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And I think too, again, with SSRIs, yes, they may help with whatever it is that you're struggling with. But the problem is you have to go to the root of why you're struggling with it in the first place.
Well, and this is where I don't mean to ruffle feathers here, but I really, truly believe that there is a place for these medicines. I really, truly believe that they can help a lot of people get out of a lot of dark holes, but they are not meant to be forever. You are not meant to be on this SSRI or SNRI for the rest of your life, and you're not supposed to up the dose every time you start feeling something. Think about that, like what you're missing out on. Like, I understand that they really help people get out of, I mean, it lowers your tolerance to.
Right. Well, and it's like what we talked about with Kyler, like if you feel like the SSRIs aren't working, you up the dose.
Yeah.
With mushrooms, if you feel like they're not working, like microdosing, it's like you take a little bit of a break, like you
stop taking them.
Right.
To get them to work again. Like, think about the tolerance that your body is building up to these medicines and the tolerance that you're building up to the ability to empathize with what other humans are going through. So you don't have to be an empath for that to numb your empathy sensors. You know what I'm saying? Like, but for you and I, medicine was so different because it numbed who we were.
Yes. Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I hated taking them because I didn't feel like myself. Now, I struggled with being myself because there were so many feelings.
Right.
But also, we have realized that those feelings are our gift.
Yeah.
They are very much so a gift. And once we are aware and then we become empowered empaths, then we really can. I personally believe we're fucking unstoppable.
Oh, 100%.
Because we do have a voice now. We do have stronger boundaries. And also, it's all out of love.
Do you know what I'm realizing now is when I first started diving into this and reading about what it meant to be an empath, there was so much sadness around it because I'm like, even though I knew what it was, I'm like, fuck, this is hard. This is not a blessing. This is a curse.
Yeah, I was like, why me?
Who wants to be an empath? Like, this is awful. And then over the last couple of years, because of that, and it does feel bad losing friendships and losing relationships and losing family members. But I have also in those 2 years added people to my life.
Yes.
That have empowered me, who understand who I am, who want to know more about what I am and how I am, who are like me. Mm-hmm. And that I've gotten to this level of understanding and self-awareness with what I am that I'm like, dude, this is awesome.
Right.
I love what I am.
Right.
I love what I bring to the table. I love what I am capable of. And I love that I also now have the ability to say no.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing to add. A lot of empaths grew up with trauma, right?
Right.
And empaths often felt like they were the outcast of their family, or people didn't understand them, or they just I always felt like I didn't belong.
You were the black sheep.
Yes.
I've always said that.
Absolutely. The good thing about that, though, and what I'm realizing now, because I always thought it was a curse as well. Like, why me? Why do I have to do this work? Why do I have to feel these feelings? A very, very much so like, woe is me victim mentality.
Yes. I was about to say that, victim mentality.
But once you become empowered, you realize that being an empath is not only a gift, but you are going to be the person who is going to break generational trauma, and that is fucking awesome.
It is awesome.
Because I think so much about my son, and I want him to feel safe. I want him to have big feelings and it be okay. I want him to be able to feel sad, angry, happy, all of it, and me be a safe space for him. And not made to feel like those big feelings aren't okay. And I just think about so much about what I wanted as a child. And because I think about that so much and I'm so concerned with that, I have confidence that, again, I am a human. I am not perfect. I will do things, unknowingly to Kai, I'm sure, that will make him upset or angry. But I know he's going to have a different childhood than what I had.
Oh, of course.
And that's amazing.
Of course.
So,
some of the things that you and I have had to learn to do now that we know what we are and who we are. I wanted to circle back on the horror movies.
I know, because I wanted to add, my friends made fun of me because I didn't like scary movies. And again, it's like what you said, it just hit me differently. And then we were talking earlier about how we both love Game of Thrones. I'm like a Game of Thrones, fucking wizard. I know everything about everything in regards to that series. I struggled with gory scenes still. I mean, they did not sit with me well. I liked the story of it, but after the Red Wedding, I was like, I'm traumatized. I can never, I can't I don't come know back to this. I think I took a 2-week break because it really, it affected me that much. I was sobbing, and, Tony was like, okay, get it together. All of these people are alive. It's a show, whatever. I'm just but I still don't like to watch that happen, even when it's not real. So
there are some shows my husband watches horror and gory, and it doesn't affect him, and I'm like, how can you go to sleep after watching it?
You serial killer.
Right, seriously. Because even the shows that we would watch together that were hard to watch, because we did watch Game of Thrones, I would have to make sure I watched something like a palate cleanser after.
Yes.
Something stupid and New Girl or Schitt's Creek, or, I would watch The Real Housewives sometimes.
Ted Lasso.
It was Ted Lasso. That's such a good palate cleanser. I mean, that's just a good all around everything.
Yes.
But I would have to feel good again.
Yes. I'm the same way.
And I never understood why. And now I'm like, okay, that's why. But another interesting thing, I can't do haunted houses.
Oh, yeah.
At all. And it's when I tell people that, they are so like, oh, we're going to get you to do a haunted house. I'm like, you don't understand.
I don't like it.
The last time I did it, I peed my pants. And it wasn't a little pee. It was tie your shirt around your waist pee.
Oh my God.
Because I cannot handle gore and being scared. And this is another interesting thing. Have you seen the videos that Sarah's posted of me being terrified?
Yes.
She has so many more that she hasn't posted of me because
fucking funny.
My nervous system is so, everything startles me. Everything scares me. Loud noises freak me out. And that's like a highly sensitive person thing.
And that's funny because Tony always scares me. So like always. And he literally, it's like he like gets joy out of like my pain and agony sometimes.
I wish Jason was down here to say this because he jokes all the time how he could start like a YouTube page about if I was walking around with a camera on my forehead all the time, but because he's not trying to scare me, he just like walks in a room and he's like, I live here. Yeah,
Tony tries. So so a lot of times like I'll be in the shower and I'll just be like, I don't know. I'm just
in the moment, in the shower.
Right. With myself, like not doing anything weird, but like just, I don't know, thinking and showering and like not paying attention to what's around me because I think I'm in the privacy of my own home in my own shower and my fiance is not going to traumatize me. But he'll like I won't be paying attention. I won't realize what's going on around me. And he'll just like come and he'll purposely try to like get a reaction out of me. And it works 100% of the time.
Oh my God. No, it never fails. Jason doesn't even try. But that's the funny thing. If he tried, and he said that too before, because I've tried to scare him and I've only succeeded like once or twice. He was like, oh, you just wait. You just wait. You thought you got scared before. I wasn't even trying. So now I'm like terrified because it's going to happen one day.
But that's really honestly quite interesting that we've never really talked about like that before. But because us both being empaths, we have similarities with things like that, like scary movies and getting startled.
Well, so one of the things I want to ask you this because I was listening to a podcast this morning and it talked about it. I was like, oh my God, I had to do that. I don't watch the news.
I don't watch the news either.
Okay. I struggled with that for a little while because I felt like I was being naive or that ignorance is bliss or I don't want to know. But what I have found, if it's important, I'll hear about it.
I love that.
And it's always been that.
And I just think too, we used to not ever talk about politics. No. I don't want to get super deep into it because I'm whatever. But with news and with social media, it's easy. And I've myself have gotten really wrapped up into, a lot of issues like racism and all of that stuff where I felt very, very passionately about it. But I let it affect me so much. And now I just realize like I can still believe what I believe, but me making a difference isn't me going on social media and arguing with people or angrily expressing what my opinion is. I'm just going to do things.
Do you know that was literally what the podcast I was listening to this morning was saying? And I want to touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because what I have realized in the last because I just stopped watching the news like 2 years ago. And I know like in the middle of COVID, you stopped watching yes. Absolutely, because there was so much happening and I couldn't shut myself off. But I realized I wanted to fight all of these battles and they weren't all my battles to fight.
Yeah.
But it felt like I had to choose one and there was always a fight and there was always something to be said about something going on in the world. Right. And where I am now in my life, I have realized that my place in these fights is to be a light. I know I'm going to like tear up and that sounds like very pretentious, but it's
light and love.
That, yes, because I don't need to know what the fight is about. If I have an inner peace and I have an inner love, then that is the energy that I am going to be putting out into the world. And I don't have to fight a fight to prove that that's what I feel.
And the hard thing about right now is you're one way or you're the other way.
Yeah.
It's
a separation.
It's very black and white, and it is a separation. And it's, you're either this or you're either that.
And it shouldn't be that way.
And it shouldn't have to be that way. But I also saw myself getting caught up in that.
Right. Because it's hard not to.
Right. And so for my own, my own peace and my own mental health, I had to take a step back. But also after doing mushrooms, I've realized that it's not so black and white. And again, oftentimes we have more in common with each other than we think, but there is a lack of empathy. There is a lack of compassion. There is a lack of love. And so my way of still fighting the good fight is to, like what you said, being the light, being the love, because we are missing that greatly. 100%. And so the best way to want the world to be that way is to be it, right, and to do it and to spread it.
I want to talk about this with you.
Okay.
And it goes back to what I was saying this morning before we started recording about human design.
Okay, that's what you wanted to talk to me about?
That's the episode of the podcast that I was listening to was about human design.
Okay.
How interesting that this is coming full circle, but it's not. but I want to talk to you about it after we do this list.
Okay, let's do the list.
Okay, so for anyone listening, we are going to put in our bio for this episode the link to this book. And she has like a website where there's like this list of questions that you can ask yourself. Because what I would like to get away from is people pointing fingers or assuming people are empaths or narcissists or assuming that you're an empath, because you saw a TikTok. What I would like to do and like to invite you to do, our listeners, is to really explore this and get an understanding of it and ask yourself these questions and not just assume you're an empath or assume a friend is a narcissist because you read something or you saw something.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. And again, most of us, we all have narcissistic tendencies.
Absolutely.
All of us, every single one of us, even
just
if you're
like
not
that,
a narcissist.
There's a spectrum.
Right. Same thing with empathy. We all show characteristics of being empathetic towards things or people, but you may not necessarily be an empath.
Right.
So
questions?
Get into it.
So this is I kind of want to say put a finger down, but there's 15 of them. So put a finger and some toes down. You can always pause or
make a tally.
Make a tally. Like if you're not driving in the car, like put some notes down and answer these questions. There's 15 of them. Okay. So have you ever been labeled overly sensitive, shy, or introverted?
Every day of my fucking life.
Okay, so that's a yes for you. That's a yes for me. Do you frequently get overwhelmed or anxious?
Pre-mushrooms, yes.
Yes.
But I feel empowered now. So like I said, I do feel anxiety at times, but I don't feel like I suffer from.
So it's interesting because when I was reading this book again, I haven't read this in 2 years and I'm reading it in a different way now. And I said this to you earlier. I was like, I kind of want to go through and read it again. And I even said this to my husband last night. I'm like, reading it now is so different. Even taking those little empath quizzes are so different. Because if I answered the questions to what I'm going through in my life right now, it would be like, oh, girl, you're fine.
Mm-hmm. That's why I said pre-mushrooms or post-mushrooms.
I think pre-empowered you and post-empowered you. So answer them as pre-mushrooms, pre-empowered, pre-self-aware.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So second question, do you frequently get overwhelmed or anxious?
Yes.
Okay. Do arguments and yelling make you feel sick?
Yes. They've made me throw up.
Oh, they're the worst. Do crowds drain you and do you need alone time to recharge?
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm like, yes to all of these too. Do noise, odors, and nonstop talkers overwhelm you?
Yes. Nonstop talkers is a big one. Odors, I don't know.
Odors, not so much, but I do like soft smells, and sometimes they don't bother me.
I mean, like, I'm not like, hey, you should bring your BO over here and I can smell it.
Right. Yeah, some people are more sensitive to smells and sounds than others. Yeah, those don't bother me, but the nonstop talkers overwhelm me. Yes. And I do think crowded areas overwhelm me because there's so much chatter and so much noise. It's like...
But like, I love a concert.
I do love a concert.
But I don't love like... feeling like I have to talk to a lot of different people.
Yes.
And like I have to show up and be a certain way.
Concerts are different because you're not interacting with people. You're there to experience the music.
And the vibe, everyone's there for
the same thing.
Yeah, the energy is the same, kind of, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think Kyler was touching on that in our last episode about being on acid in groups, which I've never done.
Me either.
I've only done it in a small group. You have not.
I've not done ever, but that's okay.
But that makes a lot of sense that like concerts are very different than like a party or...
You're all there for the same purpose.
Right.
And it's to just be happy and enjoy the moment.
And be yourself. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so next question. Do you have chemical sensitivities or a low tolerance to scratchy clothes?
That one, no.
Me neither.
Bitch,
to either of those.
I swear, we are literally...
neither of those.
The same.
Like, I've always been like, my skin is sensitive, but not to products. Like, my face and neck turn bright red if I'm like upset or heated or super passionate about something.
Yes, I get red and I sweat.
Yes. Oh my God. But I'm not sensitive to product.
Right. Literally, when we were watching Top Gun, Tony and I were holding hands and he's like, you are literally there's a lot of action. I don't know.
I'm feeling so overheated. Shut up. That's amazing.
Okay, go on.
Okay. So we're both no on that one.
Yeah.
Do you prefer taking your own car to places so that you can leave early if you want to? Absolutely.
Yes. I don't like to be stuck.
No.
I don't like to feel stuck places.
No, I hate it. Sometimes I'm very cautious. Like they're like, let's meet here. Let's get an Uber. And I'm like, do I want to do that?
Even in college, like I didn't want to be the person staying out till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was often, love my friends, but often with girls who could be out till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, I want to ditch you so I can go home and go to bed. Yes.
So yeah, and I think it depends on the person and the situation, but absolutely, if there's a situation where I feel like I need to leave,
I want to bolt,
or if I'm overwhelmed or my sensories are overloaded, I want to be able to get out of there. I don't like feeling trapped or stuck.
Yep.
Do you overeat to cope with stress?
I will overeat or undereat.
I never experienced undereating until last summer when I was in my low. Yeah. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced it. And I was like, oh, that's what this is like. That's what this feels like. Because I eat for comfort. Mm-hmm. So when you're in such a low that you're not eating.
I used to binge.
Okay. All right. So that's a yes. Are you afraid of becoming suffocated by intimate relationships?
100%.
I want to come back to that.
Okay.
How do I remember to come back to that?
I'll remind you. That's how.
Okay. Intimate relationships. I want to talk about that. 100%. Okay. Do we startle easily? Shut up.
Okay.
Do you startle easily?
So yeah, go ahead. And
it's been 2 years since I've read this, guys. It's been a while. So absolutely yes. Do you react strongly to caffeine or medications?
Yes.
Do you have a low threshold for pain?
I actually have a high threshold.
I do too.
Yeah.
Almost like I want to test it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's we're both no's to that one. Do you tend to socially isolate?
Yes.
Do you absorb other people's stresses, emotions, or symptoms?
I think we've already covered that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Are you overwhelmed by multitasking, or do you prefer to do one thing at a time? Yes.
So I think there's a little ADD there. I like to start something and then do something else and then do something else and then do something else. So it's like I'll do laundry and then I'll go get ready. Tony, it drives Tony crazy when I used to get ready because it would be like a 3-hour process. Not because I was taking all of that time to get ready. And I know it drives my friends crazy too.
Because you jump around?
Because I will dry my hair for 5 minutes, then go watch TV. Then I'll go do something else. Then I'll go start some dishes. It could be ADD, but I also think that was trauma.
I was about to say, like, that also mirrors some trauma symptoms, which is crazy.
I would put things off.
Yeah. Okay. I am overwhelmed by multitasking, but I feel like with 3 kids, I'm constantly multitasking.
I am overwhelmed by that, though.
Like today, when we're done here, I'm like going to be in a shitstorm. Yeah. Because I have 2 places to be at once with 3 kids, and it's just going to be overwhelming.
Mom and ain't easy.
Yeah. This morning, Jason was like, what are we doing today? What is it going to look like? I'm like, oh, it's going to be a shit show. Yeah. And he's like, all right, just checking. Cool. Yes. We're on the same page. We're going to come up tomorrow and breathe. Do you replenish yourself in nature? Yes. So this is interesting because I hated being outside. I hated nature. I hate camping, glamping, anything like that. Like anything nature, absolutely not. Beach, yes.
I was just going to say, but you've always loved going to the beach, and that is absolutely nature.
But post mushrooms, I have realized that being in nature is extremely healing for me. Mm-hmm. I never realized that before. We were just having this conversation with Jason the other day because we're about to be in a cabin in 2 weeks, and I'm like, this is not who I used to be. Yeah. But it's who I am now. So interesting. So we do replenish ourselves in nature.
Yes, I walk a lot just to
be outside. Mm-hmm. I love that.
And grounding.
Grounding, I just learned that a couple of years ago, which is an interesting thing. Yes. We can do an episode on that. Yes. Do you need a long time to recuperate after being with difficult people or energy vampires?
Story of my fucking life.
Yes. Absolutely. Do you feel better in small towns or the country rather than large cities?
I actually love a large city, and it's because I grew up in a small town. And it's not, I don't like being in a large city because I like going out and doing a lot of things. I like having access to things while being at home. Does that make sense?
It kind of does.
Because DoorDash is my best friend. Okay. So that's what I mean. I'm not getting DoorDash.
I prefer small towns. I will visit large cities. They overwhelm me. I hate driving in them. You can ask like my best friend. We were driving in Nashville, and I went down a one-way road, the wrong way, and I was freaking out. And she's like, "Do you want me to drive?" I'm like, "Yes, yes."
Okay, so if we drive in a big city, I'm driving.
100%. Okay. I know I am a bad driver. I'm not a bad driver. I am an anxious driver.
Gotcha.
I will grandma drive if my kids are in the car because I'm so worried about what could happen. I know I'm bad.
I'm a fucking pistol on the road.
Nobody likes me driving. I know this. I know. Jason and you are like that. It stresses me out. But in the city, go for it. I want nothing to do with navigating through these streets, but I like being in smaller towns. Yeah. Mm. That's a hard one. See, because I don't like small town mentality. I don't like small town.
It's not a black and white question.
It's not. If you're going to ask me, do I prefer to visit for a day? If I would prefer to go out in the country in the middle of nowhere and like just be outside or go to a city, I would choose the country.
So here's what my answer is going to be. I am very much myself when I'm by the ocean. I feel a connection to the ocean. I was born at the ocean. I'm an islander. My father was known as the man of the sea in the Marshall Islands. He was a very talented fisherman, free diver. He literally, I think I've said this, he got bit by a shark and he marked it and went back and killed it. But
you said that to me. I do not think you've said that to the listeners.
Okay. Yeah. So my dad was literally a savage, which I think I get. Like I used to be a fighter. Yeah. I got that savagery from him in the sense where if I felt like I was being attacked, I would very much so try to fight, literally physically fight people. Those days are long gone. But there's this connection to the ocean that I've always have had. I would rather go to a small, quaint beach town. See, when I think of small town, I think of country because I grew up in Iowa. That's probably what it is. Yeah. I love a small, quaint beach town. I would much rather do that than go to like a Miami. Okay. Now, I think going to Miami for a weekend would be cool.
Right.
But I like quiet and peace and water.
Okay.
Not lake, not river,
not lake,
not creek.
I've always said that.
I need ocean.
I don't do lakes. I will do them because that's the only thing I have access to.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
Right. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But I would much rather be near the ocean.
Like after I get out of lake, I'm like, ugh.
Like you need to take a shower.
Like there's like a leach on me or some ticks or something. Like that's like not me nature.
No.
But ocean, I feel very replenished from it. Like I don't know, it does something to my soul. And mark my words, I will live on the water, aka the ocean.
I know that will happen.
Yes.
One last question. Do you prefer one-on-one interactions in small groups to large gatherings?
One-on-one when it's somebody who I'm learning from.
I was just about to say that.
So here's a thing about me. I've always gravitated towards people who are older and wiser than me. So there are people who have kind of taken on like mother, father figures or just like a role model type. So there are people in my life who I very much so looked up to, and I aspire to be like them, not even just work-wise, just their relationships, their families, there's one of my former clients, John. I call him Little John, but he's literally like 7 feet tall.
Oh my God. Little John.
And I don't train him anymore, but I never had a father, and I see him as like a father figure. I love how he is with his wife. I love how he is with his daughters. Like I like even get emotional talking about him. I know, but I just like respect him. And so when I'm with him, we have very deep conversations, and he gives me very good advice, and he's just a relationship. And I've had a few of those where just people I really admire, and I love like those one-on-ones. And even you too, like when I talk to you, it goes very, very deep, and it's very like I feel very replenished after. So yes, but there are those energy suckers.
Yeah.
But people who aren't that, and people who I like I said, I really look up to, I feel re-energized when I spend time with them. Why am I crying?
It's okay because you're an empath.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's an interesting question for me too, because I do prefer one-on-one interactions over large groups, or smaller groups over large groups. However, if there is someone in that group that I think is very high energy and very, we can get into energy vampires. It sounds like such a negative, condescending thing to say about someone, but I had a lot of energy vampires in my life. So if I knew that there was somebody who was an energy vampire, I almost wanted to add people to it as buffers.
Well, and here's another thing.
Because I didn't want to be one-on-one with them.
Right. And just because they're an energy vampire to you doesn't mean that they're an energy vampire to everybody.
No, you're exactly right.
So don't take it.
It's a me thing.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a me thing.
And again, that goes back to just because I feel this way, like don't take anything personally. It's for me and my peace and my mental health.
Absolutely.
So
it's not personal.
It's never personal.
So with all of those questions, sorry, we got sidetracked a little bit. You okay?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
If you answered 1 to 5 questions yes, you're a partial empath.
Okay.
If you answered 6 to 10 yes, you have moderate empath tendencies.
Okay.
If you were 11 to 15, you have very strong empath tendencies. And if you answered yes to more than 15 questions, wait, were there more than 15?
How many questions are there?
2, 3.
Because we said no to 2, right?
Okay, there's 20.
Oh, fuck. So we're like super empaths.
Yeah.
We're like,
it says, if you answer yes to more than 15, which we both did, you are a full-blown empath. It's like, not even a little bit, bitch.
A blessing and a curse. No, it's a blessing.
But it took us a while to get to that.
It took us a long time.
It took us a while.
It took me 34 years. How about you?
36 years? No, 38 years. I'm 38.
And we're still working on it.
We're still working on it. I wanted to touch on something.
Relationships.
The relationships.
And empaths.
Thank you. When I was reading this book, one of the things that stuck out for me is, as an empath, you are usually drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now that I know this about myself and about Jason, it makes a lot more sense because he was emotionally unavailable for a very long time. However, because he's not an empath and because he's able to shut his emotions off and because he isn't draining me or doesn't come home complaining about his day, I have always felt safe with him, if that makes any sense. Like, not emotionally, like he wasn't there for me emotionally. But I think about it now, and we've talked about this, he and I, how could you imagine if I was in a relationship with another empath?
Oh my God, if me and you, like if I were a boy.
Oh my God.
And you and I dated.
I love you, but no.
Like,
thank you.
Sorry, but fuck that.
No.
Like, I can't even handle myself, let alone your
right.
ass.
That's what I was like, and I think it works both ways. I think he is able to be with someone like me, who is an extremely emotional person, because he has the ability to not let it affect him.
Which I want to add to that.
Yes.
With both Tony and with Jason, there was a light to us that they were gravitated towards. I mean, they both have.
We're not saying that. They've said that.
Right. I'm fucking awesome, you guys. So
we're fucking lights. We're lit.
Lit as fuck. No, I'm saying that in the sense that, like, they both said that there was just something that they were very drawn to.
Yes.
And they didn't know what it was, but it was instant.
Yes.
That's exactly what Tony says.
That's what Jason has said.
And yes.
And we have even said, he said, I didn't know what it was.
Yes.
And I'm like, bitch, neither did I. Now I know.
And he was always very intrigued. He was very intrigued by my beliefs and my experiences because they were very different from his. But also I thought about things in such a deep way. And he didn't. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but naturally he is kind of a surface level person.
So is Jason.
Yeah. He just doesn't think about things the way that
on a deeper level.
Right. And so, the way I've experienced my childhood, he'd never experienced, like he didn't have any of those experiences or racism, or even he also used to own a business. And he would see how I would come home and he would just be like, oh my gosh, like these aren't your problems. So the things he was attracted to also were things that drove him crazy because he didn't want me to feel so much in situations that they really depleted me, or I was struggling with depression or anxiety or panic attacks or whatever. But now that we've come to a place where we've really come together and we're in a very good, healthy place, and because I'm healthy, he has an appreciation of the way that I see people, the way I view certain experiences, the way I see life, because he learns from it. I give him a perspective that he hasn't really ever thought about before.
I was about to say, along those same lines, I've always been an asker. Like, I'm a why person. Like, why is this happening? Why is this working? Why is this doing what it's doing? And it used to bother me because he doesn't dig in that way.
Yeah.
However, this is going to go back to the human design. I'm like, we're going to circle back to this. We have to do an episode on this because he's a maybe person. Like, he's open to these things, but it's not until he hears them that he's like, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think because I dig and because I ask questions and because I like to learn all of these new things and I come to him with this information, he's not closed off to it.
Right.
He's just not the digger.
Right. Yes.
I'm the digger.
Yeah. 100%.
It goes into human design and my purpose in life. And that's where I want to get into it. Oh my God.
Another thing too is there's one specific moment. Him and I were driving in the car. I don't even remember where we were going. And one of my clients FaceTimed me and she FaceTimed me because I gave her an outfit, or I let her borrow an outfit or something. And she just was FaceTiming me to like show me. And then we just started talking about her and went into like a lot of that stuff. You know, I think that's how I made people feel, where, you know, if I was training them or friends with them, then it was like I made them feel this way. Very, very special is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. But he didn't really see my interactions with people at Six Packs often. And so when she FaceTimed me and we talked for like 20 to 30 minutes, and it was all about her. I'm not saying that in a way that's deceived her. I'm just saying in a way where it was me. I was making her feel this way.
This interaction.
I was asking her, I was hyping her up. And I get off the phone and he's like, "Do you talk like that to all of your clients?" And I was like, "I mean, what do you mean?" Like, yeah. He goes, "No wonder why you're fucking exhausted." Are you kidding me? He's like, "You're like everybody's hype man, and it's all about them, but you do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." I know. I don't know what to do.
Because you can't not do it.
Right. And I didn't really have that awareness with myself, but he was like, "Holy shit, no wonder why you're tired. Like, I'm tired. I'm tired listening to you like talk like that." And he was like,
and
"No wonder
that much."
Well, and he's like, "No wonder why you have no fucking energy when you get home." Because it wasn't like I'm like going and running a marathon.
Right.
I'm putting so much into other people.
But it does feel like you're running a marathon.
And it did feel like I was tired, but I wasn't putting any of that into myself. So that's something that I had to learn with being an empath, is the light that you have. That's amazing. And people see that, and that's beautiful. But you have to put that light and that energy into yourself first before you can give that out to others.
I think that's where we have had this conversation before about being everyone's hype girl.
Yeah.
And not being our own.
Yeah.
But realizing that nobody in my circle, no, I don't want to say nobody, because there were some who did, but a lot of people in my circle were not hype girls for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's
right.
That's not their calling. That's not their job. That's not why we were friends. But it was just a lot of, I'm doing all this hyping up. Where's mine?
Well,
and I wasn't even capable of doing it for myself at that point.
Right. Right. I remember a specific moment where I was talking to somebody, and, you know, she was having some troubles with her marriage, and this has been it had been like a 2-3 year ongoing thing that wasn't ever changing, but I still was very much so emotionally available whenever she needed it. And there was a moment where Tony had a rough weekend because Tony lost both of his parents. And I think it was like the anniversary of his dad's death. And then it was also his mom's birthday in that same weekend. And I remember coming to her, and I started to talk about it, and she's literally just on her phone and not even acknowledging like, oh, like he was really going through something, or talking about me and my life. And it wasn't even about me. It was about Tony, but like how, you know,
it was dismissed.
It was dismissed. And I called her out on it, and I was like, "You're not even listening to what I'm telling you. And I'm talking about his parents' death." And I said that, and she still was dismissive about it. And I'm like, I've put so much energy into you and your life and your problems. But at that moment, I was like, that's on me that I even did that.
Yeah.
That is on me that I gave her all of this energy.
Right.
And because I taught her how to treat me. So in that moment, yeah, she dismissed me, but I allowed that for 2-3 years to just talk about her, nothing about me or nothing about my life. And then the one time I bring it up, she dismissed it. Of course she did.
Yeah.
Because I poured all of this energy into her, and I expected nothing back. And, you know, I've had to learn, like, you can't do that.
No.
And it's on me if I do allow that. I have to put energy into myself, and I have to be very, very picky and choosy with who I'm giving my energy to, because it's not worth it. If, like I said, I've been dealing with you for 2 years and talking to you, and I mention one thing about me and you dismiss me, and I call you out on it and you dismiss me again, like, that's on me.
Well, and that takes you back to like what you were saying earlier, just feeling like that victim mentality. And when you realize, you're like, hold up.
No, I got to change shit.
This.
Yeah, I have to change.
I did this.
Yeah, because you teach people how to treat you.
Right.
And that's something I'm like, I'm not a victim. I have to learn, and I have to be bold with what I'm going to allow and what I'm not going to allow.
Right.
And who I'm going to give my light towards, because we both have a light. And I'm not saying this in a condescending way, but I think, we both, our gift is the love and the light we give to other people.
I think a lot of people have it.
Absolutely.
I don't think they're aware of it. I don't think they know what to do with it. I think that they are numbing it. I think they're dimming it. I think they're with people who are dimming it.
Yeah.
That's one of the, oh my God, I don't want to talk about Jason's mushroom trip, but in one of them, he said what I had been feeling for so long. And he said he saw me as this light and he had been dimming it. And I felt that for a very long time, but didn't know how to articulate that. And of course, if I say that to him, he's going to be like, what the fuck are you even talking about? But, he saw it. And when you step into this power or this light that you have, it's insane what happens around you.
Mm-hmm.
But some of you aren't even aware that this is a power.
Yeah.
And some of you may be aware of it, but you don't know what to do with it.
Well, and we felt a lot of shame with it. Because I literally am just was talking about somebody I cared about and started to cry.
Right.
And I felt a lot of shame because I often got called a crybaby or was often judged for being emotional.
You're so sensitive.
And you're so sensitive, where now I'm like, no, it's like, it's a gift.
I am.
It's a gift that I feel things so deeply that I, can cry or empathize just on such a deep, deep level with other people. That is absolutely a gift, and it's something that we need more of. And you're right. I think there are a lot of people who also have that gift, but they're so out of touch with themselves, like what we were.
Yeah.
And hopefully, listening to
it was
this.
always there.
Absolutely.
It was always there.
Absolutely.
We just didn't know what it was, what to do with it. And now we're kind of stepping into our true higher selves.
Yeah. And the people I've met stepping into this, like I feel like I'm starting to meet people because I feel empowered, and I think that like radiates. And again, like doing this with you and meeting the people that we've met and thinking about the people that I'm gonna meet that are like me and I can bond with on such a deep, deep level.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I know. I was going to say that's like that back to, the people that we end up losing, those holes that they create are usually filled. And I'm starting to notice that it is starting to fill back up with people who understand and who are the same sometimes. Yeah. And, they don't even have to be the same to be someone who adds to my life. It's just a very different way of living and experiencing relationships through other people.
Yes.
I wanted to do the human design thing, but I don't think we're going to have time.
Girl, this is a longer podcast.
I know. Oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at the time, Leah.
Oh my God.
I'm telling you, we could do this for days.
Oh, we might have to do this as a 2-parter.
Yeah.
Part
maybe,
2.
You know what? Maybe we should just buy a big house, combine our families. We can just hang out in the basement, start talking, and just hit record, and then just see what the fuck happens.
We just put cameras all throughout the house. We don't even need to have headphones or podcast equipment or anything. Just somebody come.
Exactly. No, I think that's good, and we can get into human design.
I want to get into human design later, next time. Because it's I gotta say it.
We said this was going to be a shorter one.
We fucking did, didn't we?
This is the longest one we've ever done.
Well, I hope you guys got something out of this. We will link the book and whatever else we said we were going to link.
The test.
And all we want is for you guys to hopefully get out of this some information that can help you or help you understand someone in your life, or maybe get you to a place where you are questioning who you are.
Yes, I love that.
And what you can bring to the table.
I love that too.
Oh my God.
That's great. Well, and what I want to add though, make sure, please, if you listen, leave us a review. A comment review would be amazing on why, on why you love listening to us, because it would help us. Share with your friends or your loved ones. Follow us on See You on the Other Side podcast on Instagram, and See You on the Other Side pod on TikTok.
Okay.
All right.
And we'll see you on the other side.